Okay, so the last section of Chapter 4 deals with factors that affect that five-step decision-making process we just talked about. And so we'll go through those factors. This is an image that I believe I got from your textbook, but it gives you a good understanding of the three types of factors that affect that five-step decision-making process: internal, external, and situational. I'm going to break each one of these down briefly so that you have a good understanding of what they are. So the first one is internal, also known as psychological. And so if you look at the difference in psychology and sociology, the easiest way to understand this, or I guess at the most basic term, basic level, is that psychological factors are internal thoughts, processes, behaviors. We'll talk about this in a second, are things that impact our behavior. And sociological would be external factors, or things that impact us from our environment we live in. So internal or psychological factors are unique to each individual and will help make the decision in a lot of ways of what sports they're going to participate in and whether or not they actually have a good time doing it. So again, that five-step process. So for example, some internal factors would be our personality. So these are a set of consistent responses that an individual makes to the environment. So aggressive or dominant or orderly, these are the types of things that we as people have in us, our personality. So somebody who, for example, might be more of an aggressive person or a personality that's aggressive may be more likely to lean towards an action sport, so mixed martial arts or BMX biking or even contact sports such as football. While others that may not be aggressive may want to be in other sports that are not seen as being as aggressive. Not saying that sport you can't be aggressive and be successful in any of them. Those are personality traits. And so understanding somebody who may be orderly may be more interested in playing something like golf. But the whole point is our personality affects that. The second one is our perception. And this deals with basically how we select, organize, and interpret stimuli or things that we see on a regular basis. And our main goal as marketers is to help shape the image or perception that consumers have. And so this is where a lot of what the influence we have on them comes from. So does somebody perceive our sport to be of value? Does somebody perceive the offerings of our fitness center to be of value to the membership? Well, a lot of that comes back to what the marketer says about those offerings. So is it worthwhile to have a Zumba class, or is it worthwhile to have a boxing area at the gym? Well, a lot of it has to go with what are you trying to say about those sections. Is it something that matches the needs and wants of the consumers that you already have or the ones you want to have? And so perception is a big part of our internal factor. And then the third one is motivation. So what motivates people? So our internal forces that oftentimes direct the fulfillment of the need. So it goes back to our problem recognition in the five-step process. And one of those things is, if we look at, or one way to understand motivation, is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And you can see it listed here. At the most basic level, we have physiological needs. Breathing, homeostasis, water, sleep, sex, food, and excretion. Those are essentially Maslow's basic needs of a human individual. And as you work up, you can see that it builds upon that. And at the very top level, self-actualization is generally where we look at, where a lot of sport comes into play. Now, of course, some of these things are also fulfilled in sport activity, but that's one way of looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The second factor is external, and I've already mentioned this briefly. External or sociological factors are the influences around us. Those influencers outside of the individual that affect what types of sports they participate in or how they participate in them. I did trail running because a lot of my friends were doing trail running. Was that a factor? Absolutely. Was it my own internal personality? Not so much. It was more of people that I was around. My personality fit into that, and my motivation was there, and my perception was that it was quality. So of external factors, here are some examples. The first one is culture. Now, we've talked about culture before, but it is a set of learned values, beliefs, or traditions that are shared from one generation, passed down from one generation to the next. And so we know that they are learned values and beliefs, and they can impact the sport participant as in both positive and negative ways. We can see certain cultures that are leaning towards certain sports. Some that has to be geographically located, meaning people in the north have colder weather. Part of their culture is hockey, and part of the south is football and baseball, and so some of that comes into play. But a lot of it does come from the cultural beliefs about a sport or a type of activity. Social class is also an external source, and this is where we look at social classes being a division of our society based on a lot of things, one of them being income. It could be education, your occupation, your wealth, those types of things, and depending on the culture in which you're in American culture, we have a variety of different social classes. Other countries have more, some have less, but that is something that influences us. So our social surrounding, our social class does impact our participation, our ability to participate in some sports. For example, golf being one that is has been and still is a moderately expensive sport to participate in, and so social class would have an impact on that. Our reference groups, and these are typically those people that were influenced by or have been influencing us over time. One thing we look at in here is looking at college athletics is our alumni networks. But included in that could also be friends, could be coworkers, could be our surrounding. And that was really, for me, the reference group really impacted me in participating in trail running. And then the last one is family. This include a lot of different things, come back to overlapping with social class. So you could say family income can also dictate how many sports you participate in. Also, parental stability is also a concern in a lot of ways. A family that may only have a single parent having to work more than one job may not have the funds or the time available to send their kids to multiple sporting events or activities. And so family can be an influence. They can also influence what types of sports you participate in. Again, going back to sources of information in the second module, in the third part of this chapter, the second part of the 5-step decision-making process, our external sources would be our family as well. So these are all examples of external factors. The last factor that affects that 5-step process is situational. These are temporary. They don't stay constant, but they may be important more or less in certain times or places. And so, for example, these would be our physical surroundings. So maybe I want to go play intramural soccer, but for the last 2 months it's been raining, and so I can't play because the fields are closed. Those types of activities. My social surroundings, so who I go to the sporting events with. Maybe I wanted to do this fitness class, the spinning class, because my best friend wanted to do it, and then my best friend got sick, so I'm not going by myself, but I might go next time. That's, again, a situational factor that would change. Time, mentioned this before, but our parents' ability to take us places, single parents, that is, the amount of time it takes to play 18 holes of golf is longer than it would to play a match of table tennis. So those types of things can impact us. And then our antecedent states, which we'll talk more about antecedents in the next chapter, but antecedents is defined as what comes before, and so it is our temporary physiological and or mood. So for example, I worked in the yard yesterday, and when I worked out this morning, I didn't want to go and lift weights. That was a temporary factor, a situational factor that was an antecedent state. I still worked out. It wasn't great, but the whole point is it affected my desire to participate in that activity. So those are the 3 situational factors and the end of chapter 4. Make sure you go and watch the ending, make sure you go and read the ending of the chapter 4, and make sure you've done all of the required material.